My mom told everyone her sister was a loser. Then that loser gave me a free apartment and my mom got nothing. Original post. I, 38F, still have the letter sitting on my kitchen counter. It arrived on a Tuesday, one of those crisp, golden October Tuesdays in Portland where the leaves on Hawthorne Boulevard turn the color of rust and honey and everything smells like rain that hasn't quite fallen yet. I remember because I was running late for a parent-teacher conference at my daughter Lily's school, and I almost tossed the envelope into the junk pile with a Comcast flyer and a coupon book for a pizza place that closed 2 years ago. But something stopped me. The return address was a law firm, Callister, Reeves and Whitman, with an office on S.W. Morrison Street downtown. And the envelope was thick, the kind of heavy cream-colored stock that says someone paid more than 49 cents to send you something important. I slid it open standing at the counter, still holding Lily's forgotten lunchbox in my other hand. It was a letter from a notary, attached to a formal property transfer document. My aunt, Margot Ellison, was transferring ownership of a 2-bedroom apartment in the St. John's neighborhood of Portland to me. The letter was brief and professional, explaining that the transfer was a gift, that all taxes and fees had been prepaid by the grantor, and that I needed to schedule an appointment to sign the acceptance paperwork within 60 days. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor, because my legs simply stopped cooperating. Let me explain who Margot Ellison is, or rather, who she was to me, because there's a difference between knowing someone exists and actually knowing them. Margot is my mother's younger sister. Growing up in our family, a sprawling, complicated, deeply Midwestern clan originally from outside of Milwaukee, Margot was the one people whispered about. She was the sister who left. The sister who didn't come to Thanksgivings. The sister who sent birthday cards with $20 bills but never showed up to blow out candles. My mother, Diane, spoke about her the way you'd speak about weather in a distant country, with vague awareness and zero emotional investment. Margot's doing her own thing, Mom would say, which was code for, Margot made choices I don't approve of, and we don't discuss it. What I knew about Margot could fit on an index card. She'd never married. She'd worked in something related to graphic design or publishing. The details shifted depending on who was telling the story. She'd lived in Portland for decades. And she'd had some kind of falling out with my mother around the time I was in my early 20s, maybe 2008 or 2009. After that, the birthday cards stopped. The occasional Christmas phone call evaporated. Margot became a name without a person attached to it. I hadn't seen her since I was 23. I was now 38. 15 years of nothing, and then a legal document handing me an apartment. My first call was to my husband, Derek. He picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the hum of the warehouse floor behind him. He manages logistics for a craft brewery distribution company. "Babe, slow down," he said, because apparently I was talking very fast. "Your aunt is giving you an apartment? Like, for free? Is she dying?" The letter doesn't say she's dying. It says it's a gift transfer. Everything's already paid for. People don't just give away apartments, Nora. I know that. Is this a scam? It's from a legitimate law firm. I already looked them up. There was a pause. I could hear him processing, the way he does, methodical, steady, turning the thing over like he's checking a shipping manifest for errors. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to call the law firm. And then I think I need to go see her." "You haven't seen this woman in 15 years. I know. And you don't know why she picked you. I know that too." Another pause. "Okay. Let me know what you find out. And Nora, be careful. Family stuff like this always has a price, even when they say it's free." Derek wasn't wrong. He'd watched me navigate my family's dysfunction for the 12 years we'd been together. He'd seen the guilt trips, the passive-aggressive holiday negotiations, the way my mother could weaponize silence for weeks at a time. He'd held me on the couch after phone calls with my older brother, Kevin, who had a talent for making me feel like I was perpetually failing at being a daughter. Derek had earned his skepticism honestly. But something about that letter, the clean, precise handwriting on the notary's cover note, the thoroughness of the prepaid fees, felt intentional. Not careless. Not impulsive. Someone had planned this carefully, and I wanted to know why. I called Callister, Reeves, and Whitman the next morning. The paralegal who handled my case was a woman named Sandra, and she was calm and efficient in the way that legal professionals are when they've done something 1,000 times. "Ms. Ellison arranged everything about 6 months ago," Sandra told me. She was very specific about the terms. "The apartment is fully paid off, no mortgage, no liens. Property taxes are current through the end of next year. She's also set aside a small fund to cover the first 2 years of HOA fees. All you need to do is sign the acceptance documents, and the title transfers to you." Did she say why? She didn't share her reasoning with us, no. But she did leave a note for you, which I can give you when you come in to sign. A note. Margot had left me a note. I made the appointment for the following Friday. Update 1, the note and the address. I went to the law office alone. Derek offered to come, but I told him this felt like something I needed to do by myself. He understood, or at least he pretended to, which is sometimes the same thing when you've been married long enough. Sandra was exactly as she'd sounded on the phone, early 50s, reading glasses on a chain, the kind of woman who radiates competence. She walked me through the documents with patient precision, explained every clause, every tax implication, every detail of the transfer. I signed where she pointed. It took about 40 minutes. Then she handed me an envelope. Smaller than the first one. Plain white. My name written on the front in that same careful handwriting. I opened it in the elevator on the way down. Nora, I know this is strange. I know we don't know each other, not really. But I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I want you to have the apartment. It's in a good neighborhood. The neighbors are decent. There's a coffee shop on the corner that makes a very good court-to-do. I'm not dying, in case you're wondering. I'm just making a decision while I'm still clear-headed enough to make it. If you want to know why, come see me. I'm at 4417 North Fessenden Street. I'm usually home after 3 p.m. I have a gray cat named Bowie. Don't bring flowers, I'm allergic. Margot. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time after reading that. There was something about the tone, dry, precise, slightly wry, that reminded me of someone, though I couldn't place who. It didn't sound like my mother. It didn't sound like anyone in our family, actually. It sounded like a person who had thought carefully about what she wanted to say and then said exactly that and nothing more. I drove to Fessenden Street that same afternoon. The house was a small craftsman bungalow, the kind Portland is full of, green siding, white trim, a porch with 2 wooden chairs and a collection of succulents in mismatched pots. The neighborhood was quiet. A woman was walking a golden retriever across the street. Someone had hung a Halloween wreath on the door 2 houses down. I knocked. My heart was doing something unreasonable in my chest. The woman who opened the door was smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Her hair was silver now, cut short in a way that suited her angular face. She was wearing a denim shirt rolled to the elbows and paint-stained jeans, and she looked at me with dark brown eyes that were startlingly familiar. They were my mother's eyes, set in a completely different expression. "Nora," she said. Not a question. A recognition. "Hi, Margot." She stepped back and held the door open. "Come in. I just made coffee. Do you still take cream, or did you switch to black like everyone does eventually?" "I still take cream." "Good. Black coffee is a form of performative suffering, in my opinion." I laughed before I could stop myself. I hadn't expected to laugh. The inside of the house was warm and cluttered in a deliberate way. Bookshelves on every wall, framed prints and original artwork layered in clusters, a drafting table by the window covered in sketches. The gray cat, Bowie, was perched on the back of the couch like a sphinx, watching me with the tolerant suspicion that cats reserve for strangers. Margot poured coffee into 2 ceramic mugs, handmade, slightly lopsided, and we sat at her kitchen table, which was scarred with decades of use and covered in a faded tablecloth printed with lemons. "So," she said, "you came." "I came. And I have about 40 questions." "I expected you would. Go ahead." "Why me?" She wrapped both hands around her mug. "Because you're the only one in this family who ever asked me a question and actually waited for the answer." I blinked. "When did I do that?" "Thanksgiving, 2007. You were 20. Your mother was in the kitchen doing her annual performance of martyrdom over the turkey. Kevin was in the living room arguing with your father about the Packers game. And you came and sat next to me on the porch and asked me what I was working on. I told you I was illustrating a children's book about a fox who builds a library. And you asked me what the fox's name was." "I don't remember that." "I know you don't. But I do. The fox's name was Elliot, by the way. The book was published in 2009. It sold about 12 copies, most of them to me." She smiled, a thin, private smile. "My point is, you were kind. And you were curious. Those are not common qualities in our family, Nora." That hit somewhere deep and unexpected, like pressing on a bruise I'd forgotten about. "But an apartment, Margot. That's not a thank you card. That's a significant asset." "It is. And I want you to have it. I bought it in 2003 for a price that would make you laugh now. The neighborhood's changed. It's worth something real. You can live in it, rent it, sell it, I don't care. It's yours." "But why now? Why not? I don't know. Call me. Send an email? Why a notary letter out of nowhere after 15 years? She set down her mug. Her expression shifted, and for the first time I saw something behind the composure, not sadness exactly, but a kind of deliberate resolve. The look of someone who has rehearsed a difficult conversation. Because I was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's 8 months ago. Update 2. What Margot told me. The silence in that kitchen lasted long enough for Bowie to jump off the couch, walk over, and begin winding around Margot's ankles. She reached down and scratched behind his ears without looking, the automatic gesture of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. I said I wasn't dying, she continued, and I'm not. Not imminently. The doctors say I could have years, good years, even with medication and monitoring. But the trajectory is what it is. And I decided that I wanted to make certain decisions while I was still fully capable of making them. Margot. Don't. Please don't do the face. I've had 8 months to process this, and I've done my crying. What I need now is to be practical, and the apartment is part of being practical. She explained it to me with the same careful precision as her note. She'd lived alone her entire adult life. She had no children, no partner, no dependents. Her financial situation was modest but stable. A pension from her years working as a senior designer at a publishing house, Social Security, some savings. The apartment in St. John's was her largest asset, and she'd been renting it out for years through a property management company. The rental income had been her safety net. But now the math was different. She was simplifying, consolidating. She'd sold her car. She'd set up a trust to cover her future care costs. And she wanted the apartment to go to someone who could use it, someone who wasn't already circling her belongings like a vulture at a family reunion. Your mother called me, you know, she said. About 3 years ago. Out of nowhere. First time we'd spoken in nearly a decade. She wanted to know if I still had the apartment, and whether I'd thought about what would happen to it. She used the phrase, keeping it in the family, which is Diane speak for, I want it and I'm going to make you feel guilty until you agree. I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly like my mother. I told her I'd think about it. What I was actually thinking was, absolutely not. Your mother has a house. Kevin has a house. Neither of them needs a 2-bedroom apartment in St. John's. But you and Derek rent, don't you? We do. A 2-bedroom in Selwood. The rent went up again last year. I know. I looked into it. You what? I did my research, Nora. I'm methodical. I looked into your situation. You and Derek both work. You have a daughter in 2nd grade. You've been renting for years because housing prices in this city are designed to punish people who weren't born rich. I wanted the apartment to go where it would actually change someone's life, not where it would become another asset in someone's portfolio. I stared at her. This woman, this stranger who was also my aunt, this person I'd spent maybe a cumulative 8 hours with in my entire life, had researched my financial situation, prepaid the transfer costs, set aside money for HOA fees, and delivered the whole thing through a law firm so that no one could contest it. Does my mother know you're giving it to me? Margot's smile returned, sharper this time. She does not. And I would very much enjoy being a fly on the wall when she finds out. Update 3. The family finds out. It took exactly 11 days. I hadn't told anyone except Derek, and Derek is a vault. But I'd started the process of transitioning the property management. The current tenant's lease was up in January, and Derek and I were seriously discussing whether to move in or continue renting it out. I'd visited the apartment twice, once alone and once with Derek, and both times I'd stood in the small living room with its hardwood floors and its view of the Cathedral Park Bridge and thought, this is real. This is ours. But Portland is a small enough city, and family networks are smaller still. My cousin Rachel, Kevin's wife's sister, the kind of person who treats gossip like a competitive sport, somehow caught wind of it. Maybe she knew someone at the property management company. Maybe she overheard something. It doesn't matter. What matters is that she told Kevin, and Kevin told my mother, and my mother called me on a Saturday morning while I was making pancakes for Lily. Is it true? No hello. No preamble. Just that question, delivered in the voice my mother uses when she's already decided you're guilty and the trial is a formality. Good morning, Mom. Don't good morning me, Nora. Kevin says Margot gave you the St. John's apartment. Is that true? Lily was sitting at the kitchen table drawing a picture of a dragon. I walked into the hallway and closed the door halfway. Yes. It's true. The silence was enormous. I could feel it pressing against the phone like something physical. She gave it to you. She did. And you just accepted it? Without talking to me? Without talking to Kevin? Without considering how this affects the family? It was a gift, Mom. A legal transfer. There was nothing to discuss. There is everything to discuss. That apartment should stay in the family. It should be handled properly, divided fairly. Margot has no right to just hand it to one person without consulting anyone else. It's her property. She has every right. Don't you dare lecture me about rights, Nora. I am her sister. I have been part of this family for 63 years. You're the youngest. You barely even know her. Why would she give it to you? And there it was. The real question. Not why did Margot give away the apartment, but why didn't she give it to me? I felt something shift inside my chest, a tectonic plate of old resentment grinding against a newer, harder layer of clarity. I'd spent my whole life absorbing my mother's disappointments, folding myself into smaller and smaller shapes to fit the space she allowed me. And here was Margot, a woman who'd refused to do the same thing, handing me the physical proof that there was another way to exist in this family. You'd have to ask Margot that, Mom. Don't think I won't. I hope you do. Her address is on Fessenden Street. She makes very good coffee. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but something else was steady, something in my spine that felt new and structural, like a beam that had just been bolted into place. Kevin called an hour later. His approach was different, less fury, more condescension, which was his specialty. He explained to me, slowly, as if I were a child, that the apartment was family property, and that the right thing to do would be to put it in a shared trust so that everyone could benefit from the rental income. He used the word fair 7 times. I counted. Kevin, Margot chose to give it to me. The transfer is legally complete. There's nothing to contest. There's always something to contest. Mom's already looking into it. She thinks Margot might not be competent. Don't. Something in my voice must have landed differently than usual, because he paused. Margot is perfectly competent. She made this decision with the help of a law firm over a period of months. If you or Mom try to challenge her mental capacity, you will lose, and you will damage whatever relationship you have left with her. And you will damage your relationship with me. Nora, come on. I'm serious, Kevin. This is not negotiable. He made a sound like air leaking from something pressurized and ended the call. Update 4. What I learned about the 15 years. Over the following weeks, I started visiting Margot regularly. Every Thursday afternoon, after I picked Lily up from school, I'd drop Lily at Derek's mother's house and drive to Fessenden Street. Margot would make coffee. Bowie would tolerate my presence with increasing grace. And slowly, in fragments and layers, Margot told me the story of the 15 years. The falling out with my mother hadn't been one dramatic event. It had been a slow erosion, 1,000 small cuts that Margot had endured for decades before finally deciding to stop bleeding. My mother had disapproved of Margot's life from the beginning. The fact that she never married. The fact that she chose art over a real career. The fact that she moved across the country to a city Diane considered pretentious. Every holiday visit was an interrogation disguised as concern. Every phone call contained a needle wrapped in cotton. She'd ask me if I was lonely, Margot told me one Thursday, her hands wrapped around the lopsided mug. Not because she cared about the answer, but because she wanted me to feel the shape of the question. She wanted lonely to be the word I associated with my own life. The final break came in 2009. Margot had been going through a rough patch, a contract fell through, money was tight, and she'd been dealing with some health issues that turned out to be minor but scared her at the time. She'd called Diane, hoping for the kind of comfort that sisters are supposed to offer. Instead, Diane had said, maybe if you'd made different choices, you wouldn't be in this situation. That was the last conversation we had for 7 years, Margot said. And when she finally called again, it was about the apartment. I thought about this for a long time. I thought about the way my mother had shaped the family narrative, Margot as the cautionary tale, the sister who'd gone off script and paid the price. And I thought about how that narrative had protected Diane from ever having to examine her own cruelty. I'm sorry, I told Margot. I'm sorry I wasn't there. You were a kid. Then you were a young woman trying to survive your own version of her. You don't owe me an apology, Nora. You owe yourself the permission to stop carrying her expectations. That Thursday, I cried in my car for 20 minutes before driving home. But they were the clarifying kind of tears, the kind that wash something clean rather than just making you wet. Update 5. The resolution. It's been 4 months since the letter arrived. Here's what happened with the apartment. The tenants moved out in January. Derek and I spent 3 weekends painting, cleaning, refinishing. The floors were beautiful under years of neglect, original hardwood, warm and golden. The kitchen was small but functional. The second bedroom had a window that framed the St. John's Bridge like a painting. Lily claimed it immediately and declared it the castle room. We moved in on February 1st. Our rent in Selwood had been $2,400 a month. Our housing cost was now property taxes and HOA fees, roughly $620 a month total. The difference was staggering. Derek and I sat at our new kitchen table the first night and stared at each other like people who'd been handed a life raft they hadn't known they needed. Here's what happened with my mother. She did, in fact, call Margot. I don't know the details of that conversation. Margot mentioned it once, briefly, with a kind of diplomatic flatness that told me it had been exactly as unpleasant as expected. My mother then consulted a lawyer, who apparently told her what I'd already said. The transfer was legal, clean, and uncontestable. There was no basis for a challenge. After that, my mother stopped calling me. Not dramatically, no final blowout, no slamming of metaphorical doors. She simply let the silence expand, the way she always did when she wanted to punish someone. The difference this time was that I didn't chase her. I didn't send the apologetic text. I didn't engineer a reconciliation on her terms. I let the silence be what it was, not a punishment but a space, and I filled it with other things. Kevin tried one more time, about 6 weeks in. He sent a long email explaining why the apartment situation was creating division and suggesting a family mediation. I wrote back a 3-sentence response: the apartment is mine. The decision was Margot's. I love you, but this conversation is over. He didn't reply, but his wife sent me a happy birthday text last month, which I took as a sign that the earth was still turning. Here's what happened with Margot. We kept our Thursday visits. Some weeks she was sharp and funny, full of stories about her years in publishing, the books she'd illustrated, the colleagues she'd loved and the ones she'd tolerated. Other weeks she was quieter, and I could see the edges of what was coming. A word misplaced, a name forgotten, a pause that lasted a beat too long. On those days, I just sat with her. We drank coffee. Bowie sat between us like a furry mediator. She told me once that she'd chosen me because I reminded her of who she was before the family convinced her she was wrong. You bend, Nora, she said. You bend and you think that's strength, but it's not. Strength is knowing when to stop bending. I've been thinking about that a lot. I'm not angry at my mother. Not anymore, not exactly. What I feel is something quieter and more durable, a recognition that her version of love came with conditions I was no longer willing to meet. She loved the Nora who deferred, who accommodated, who treated her approval as oxygen. The Nora who accepted a gift from a family outcast and refused to apologize for it. That Nora was a stranger to her. I'm okay with that. The apartment is warm tonight. Lily is asleep in the castle room. Derek is in the living room watching something on his laptop with his headphones on. Through the kitchen window, I can see the lights on the St. John's Bridge reflected in the Willamette River, wavering and golden. On the counter, next to the fruit bowl and Lily's latest dragon drawing, there's a framed print that Margot gave me last week. It's an illustration from the children's book she mentioned, the one about the fox who builds a library. In the picture, the fox is sitting among tall stacks of books, looking out a window at a world he's chosen to engage with on his own terms. The fox's name is Elliot. The book sold 12 copies. It's the most valuable thing I own. TLDR, my estranged aunt, who I hadn't seen in 15 years, gave me an apartment through a notary. She wasn't dying. She was planning ahead after an Alzheimer's diagnosis and wanted the apartment to go to someone who needed it rather than family members who just wanted it. My mother and brother tried to contest it and failed. I now have a home, a relationship with an incredible woman I barely knew, and the beginning of a backbone I should have grown years ago.